guys, welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we talk about movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined by my former cult member, bad babysitter, worst dog owner, and co-host.
I totally resent that description. Put upon babysitter Alex Dandino.
That is true. If there is a case to be made in the movie, it's that I don't know that she all the way asked to be a babysitter as much as the movie lets on. All right. That's neither here nor there. We got to get to some business. So, guys, if you're here with us, spending time with us, watching movies with us, we hope you love the show. If you do, please take a second and leave us a rating and review wherever you find the show. That helps us out so much, guys. We've had some people doing it recently, especially on Apple Podcasts. That helps us out a ton.
Really appreciate it. They've been great reviews, too, by the way.
Yes, that's right. And we do have a YouTube channel, Nerd Alchemist. That's plural at the S at the end. We're seeing more of you stop by to, maybe watch some reviews, leave some comments there. That's a fun place for us to do some stuff. Working on some new things. We forgot movie trailers are still coming out, so we've got some good ones that we're going to be reacting to soon.
Yeah.
So lots of fun stuff for the YouTube, other big projects on the way, so stay tuned there. And then, as always, guys, get at us on social media. We really are active on Twitter more than anything else, at Film Alchemist #1. So you can get on us there. Tell us people you'd like to hear on the show, movies you'd like to see covered. If you have a theme for a month, a double feature, something new that came out, anything, guys. We want to talk about the movies you want to talk about as well, man. That's how we'll give you the best version of the show. Also, you can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com, with the same information. Enough business. We got devastation and cruelty and trauma to discuss, Alex.
And not just because Griffey sounds like Bill Hader. Let's do this.
Damn, dude. Yeah, I took the L on that. Reviewer said that, in a positive way, one of us sounded like Bill Hader. And I just was like Michael Jordan laughing at Gary Payton in The Last Dance level sure that it was Alex. Because I've been called a lot of things. Never a Bill Hader, though. So that's something I can now add to my resume. But yeah, Alex wins on that one. Maybe we all win. I don't know. I told Alex I always feel like I'm more of a... I have an Orson Welles for the common man voice.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I would not go with Orson Welles of the People.
You know what I mean? Instead, it's more of like a stogie and like maybe like a cool jacket, like a leather jacket like the Fonz, instead of the cape and the cigarette on a stick. But me and Orson have a lot of things in common. Beards,
yeah, that's
both
true.
gaining rapids amount of weight.
Beards, both eating themselves to death.
Yeah. Just losing respect by the bucket load every day.
There's some errant recording of you bitching about having to do a chip ad or something like that.
For sure. No, I'm just saying, if I had a spirit animal, I think it could be late phase Orson Welles. But again, that's neither here nor there, because we're here today to talk about a new film, man, a fucking new film, which I think we've all desperately been missing. This one, while we didn't get to go to a cinema to see it, it did come out on Hulu, which is rapidly becoming one of the best places to watch independent films. They have an amazing fucking library, but it's weird. I feel like no one talks about how good their library is.
I think they have most of the Neon catalog, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, but like, they dropped the Nightingale, stuff like they always are having these good kind of smaller indie flicks pop up. I Trapped the Devil's there, which we've covered on the show.
Yep.
This one, though, The Lodge. We were so fucking pumped to cover this. Could not find it anywhere near me. Here in Indiana. I think it was here for like a weekend, but I was busy, so I couldn't go see it. Very sad, because I liked the previous movie, Goodnight Mommy. I'm trying to remember what the directors' names are off the top of my head. I should have had this so
Veronica Franz and Severin Fiala.
There you go, Al. Yeah. So I saw Goodnight Mommy in the theaters with my friend Sam when I was still living in L.A. Loved the movie. And I feel like I love that movie, but it had this enormous kind of like, why'd you do that, right? Goodnight Mommy has this kind of like big reveal, shocking twist moment. But I feel like everyone in the theater figures out, I don't know, the first scene you can possibly figure it out, right? But I saw that movie, right? And that aside, I was like, this is a great movie. You could just tell there was a style and a power to the direction. I was like, these directors are going to keep making good stuff. So I was stoked to see The Lodge. And I think this movie really delivers. And I have a grand theory that I'll save towards the end of the show. But Alex, what were your initial takeaways with The Lodge?
I mean, I assume it lives in the same universe as the Hereditary family.
It definitely has the Hereditary vibe.
I mean, yeah, like just from the jump, like, and again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I actually really like that aesthetic, but just like in general, the way Veronica Franz and Severin Fiala make this movie feels very much in the realm of like the Ari Asters of the world, where like first off, from the jump, we start with like a long hallway shot inside a dollhouse. I'm like, okay, so there's that. And there's just a lot of
the new
these,
subgenre
like,
is be terrified of whites that have fancy dollhouses.
Yeah,
like be
whites
very
that have
afraid
fancy
of
dollhouses and like great white collar jobs. Like that's
rich,
like pretty
rich
much
whites that have very swanky dollhouse. Something is going horribly wrong in that house for sure.
Whites that have dollhouses that are not for play for children. That's the new subgenre of horror movies.
Well, I'm going to get to this later, but we should have been tipped off to this immediately because the opening montage of the dollhouse, they're like, wow, there's a creepy Virgin Mary. Oh, there's a tiny little like 136 scale pistol on the table. And I was like, who is playing with this fucking house? But then I figured it out.
But I mean, ultimately, I like the movie was very interesting. It has a lot of, for me, we talk a lot on the show a lot about the give. You got to give one for the movie. Like there has to be one sort of sacrificial lamb of logic, no pun intended, to actually move the story forward. And I feel like The Lodge takes its liberty with a couple, actually, but it does not distract me to the point where I can't watch the movie. And I think that's the power of the movie itself.
Right. Well, I think what they do is the style, the directing, and the acting is very strong, right? This movie feels really under control. So even what struck me about it, right? I was sitting there watching, and it's one of those movies I almost wanted to turn off, even though I was enjoying it, because it's just fucking brutal, right? And it just felt to me, and this is, I mean, I get, because we talk about this, right? The give, as you call it, is if characters in movies acted like us, there wouldn't be movies, right? If I hear a disgusting, creepy sound, right, I'd be like, yep, bye. Like, burn my house down and hope I get insurance. Like, I'm not going to sit there and, like, try to battle with a poltergeist. Like, you know what I mean? Sorry. Like, I don't care what happens. I'm out, right? That's why we have to give something, because that's how movies occur, right?
Right, exactly.
This one, I felt like the give was, this dad in this movie, Richard Armitage's character, is the worst dad maybe in the history of movie. Darth Vader chops his son's hand off. Still a better father than the dad in this movie. But that's not a give, because I think maybe I
texted you when I was watching it, and I was like, the dad's the give, right? Because absolutely no one would A, do this to their children, and B, do this to their like new girlfriend.
Right.
Like,
well, okay, that's the thing.
Bananas.
But this guy is in a class of guy that we see in movies sometimes. I grew up with like the classic Midwestern. I always said, right, like, you know how you have like you were like your family when you grew up, like, were you Seinfelds? Were you Cheers? We were Roseanne people. That's like the life I grew up in, right? And so the thought of this dad is insanity, right? Because the version of this dad in my world would have been like, yeah, your mom's a bitch, I'm out. Like, you know, very much like my own father did, right? Just like, we're just not going to do this anymore. Good try. Good game, son. Hope you make it, right? That's like what our dad did. He just left. But the idea of a dad who wants to do equally as little as my own father, but also be in your face all the time, fucking your shit up.
Yeah.
But this becomes this, he is a class of really rich old guy who, you know, thinks he can still, you know, he's still, some 20-year-old is desperate for his old man cock and balls, right? Like, he still is like really cool. And he's just like, you know, someday my kids will be old enough to appreciate that I had to, you know, be running around stretching it out. Everyone's going to be thankful I made these choices.
Well, Richard Armitage's character lends itself to, like, the special genre of dads in horror movies who are, like, faux lumberjacks, who also fancy themselves, like, a man of the people in some way. And that sort of festers into this like weird thing of like, I can fix anything by being not present, but omnipresent. Meaning if my like overall value is that I like put kids in a house, I'm ultimately the best dad, or I'm working on it. And like I thought, like, because I was when I was watching it, because again, just the aesthetic is so similar. Like while I was watching it, I honestly thought about Gabriel Byrne, who we've been on record saying that's the worst dad we've ever seen in a movie.
He's not. He's aloof, but he's not like an actively bad father, right?
He's not actively
bad. This guy
bad,
reminds me more of...
Aloof is just as bad, though. Like, if Richard Armitage was just aloof in this movie, things might have gone infinitely better.
Here's the difference, though. The difference between him in Hereditary, right? Gabriel Byrne's and the dad in this would have been if... I mean, I don't know. Gabriel Byrne's would have had to be holding his dad down while the naked Oles just, like, had at it on top of him, right? This guy's like, hey... Here's this lady who's unstable. You guys don't know each other. They do that brilliant title card that says 6 months later, he's like, guess what? We're shacking up and I can't write my book on cults remotely. I have to leave you with no car. And then as I'm leaving, hey, unstable girlfriend, gun combo. Let's go. He sees her just whip out a gun and Terminator some bottles and he's like, what could go wrong?
Yeah,
that's not aloof. That's actively destructive.
Yeah, no, that's actively putting your children in harm's way. However,
I also forgot the most abusive, horrible moment. And again, remember, their mother killed herself 6 months ago, in part because he decided he had to go, drive this dick around town, right? So he's partially the gun that kills her, phallic, right? That's also his dick is the killer, right? His dick is also doing the killing. He decides, not only am I going to leave them here with her, no communication, no this, no that, here's a gun for her. Also, hey kids, why don't you just listen to me bounce this broad around all hours of the night? Are you fucking kidding? So not only is this uncomfortable, and he's like, I know, hey, you've had 6 months to get over it. Now listen to new moms moaning and cackling. What?
Just
I was watching the screen actively just like... I will say this movie made me a little bit like, you know what? Maybe I should answer my dad's Facebook messages because he did leave me alone and not subject me to this.
There is like a weird, again.
Could you imagine?
It's so bizarre. Like, honestly, again, like there's not a single choice the dad makes in this movie that I'm like, well, that's definitely a sound decision based on parental guidance. No. Like, there's nothing done in this movie that is like in service of his children, but more importantly,
his girlfriend,
like, or his girl, exactly, or his girlfriend, or his unstable former cult member girlfriend who clearly has some horrible residual issues. And again, it's like,
and let's be clear here, we're not saying that she's unstable and a bad person. She suffered a massive fucking trauma. Yeah. And, like, here's an idea. Before she comes in the house, maybe take away all the religious paraphernalia that was used to torture her as a kid. That's a 5-minute give. Make it a little better.
Just make it, again, there's so much bizarre, like, horrible, it's not even horrible parent behavior. It's like horrible person behavior on a regular steady stream from this character. And, like, the only time you get a sense that he actually gives a shit is when he can't actually get a hold of them on the phone. And he's like, "Oh God, I'm so worried. I hope the roads are clear." I'm like, "Really, asshole?"
He's so full of shit. No, you know what it is. He's like, "Oh man, if she suicides everyone up there, I'm gonna have to miss my golf trip next weekend." That's the kind of dad we're dealing with in this movie.
Well, no, what he's really doing is like, "Oh God, man, now I got to go back up to have Christmas with those fucking Rugrats instead of staying down in town and pounding sliz." Like, that's really what he was doing.
He's already found the next Mrs. Claus.
Oh, yeah.
Alrighty. Hey, kids, here's another ho-ho-ho you have to stay with for the winter. Sorry, now I'm into grandma stuff. Let's rage.
There's legitimately,
hey, cult lady, can you pack up your dog that never moves and beat it?
Yes, there were like 4 times, and my wife and I were watching the movie. We were watching it when Andrea watched the movie with me, and there were 4 times we both like at the same time shouted like, "You got to be fucking kidding me," or something along those lines.
It's
like
that
no
kind of a
fucking
movie
way.
though, where you want to know that there's a moment in the movie I was like, woo, woo, red flag, red fucking flag, is when she turns off the thing in favor of watching an equally creepy movie, Jack Frost. I was like, whoa, this lady, you got to get the fuck out of this cabin.
That was the best. Oh my God. I'm so glad you said that, because honestly, like, I don't know. Actually, there's a podcast called How Did This Get Made? I went and saw, I'm sure all of you listened to it. I went and saw that live. The episode I saw live was about Jack Frost.
Which is weird because they have Jack Frost Keaton, which is like way creepier than it should be family. And then they had Jack Frost, awesome serial killer, like where he's Shannon Elizabeth's bathwater.
Oh yeah, Jack Frost is legitimately like a religious horror movie. You could make that argument pretty easily.
Right, but like, I'm saying the one where he's the bathwater, because it has a quirky comedy to it, almost less creepy than the Keaton version. The Keaton version, I just remember watching it as a kid, and you just feel uncomfortable. You're like, this is not okay. Why would you think this is what I want?
It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's so awkward. But yeah, the fact that they were like, oh, well, I guess we shouldn't watch The Thing. It's too bloody. So let's watch Jack Frost, where a guy dies, becomes a snowman, and just like tortures his family for like the entire winter.
I don't want you to be afraid of the thing that won't happen, right? Shape-shifting alien. Let's just really get in that brain and scar you up. It went well for me when that was done to me as a child.
Yeah. Again, I was actually thinking about this too, because this like the Jack Frost movie itself technically confirms that God exists and sends people back to Earth as snowmen.
Or something exists.
So, oh no, it's God. It's God.
Is it?
It confirms that Catholics and Christians are correct.
It could be Odin.
It's not Odin.
Why are we so on Jack Frost?
Because this is like, but this is important because Riley Keough's character, Grace has this like huge emotional breakdown because she was she was raised in this religion. She's the only survivor of this insane religious cult that were like Heaven's Gate murder suicide people. And she chooses not to watch The Thing, but instead Jack fucking Frost. There's a fucking subtle irony to that I'm definitely with, but you know that that's where it was coming from.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, it's really, that's what I mean. I love and hate once they lock themselves in the house, right? Because once the dad's gone, you're like, finally. Like, now I don't have to deal with just yelling at my TV constantly. Because every decision he makes is fucking insanity. Fucking insanity, right? And so now you're like, all right, we got these kids. We got her. The next thing you know, a pretty good thriller starts unfolding, right? Yeah. It's just kind of good. Is there a supernatural element? Is there something going on? Again, I think this movie suffers a little bit like Goodnight Mommy, where the reveal feels kind of weak. You know what I mean? Where I was like, well, that's
I was
how
really
we're
into
going.
it. Like, I was super into. I'm like, whoa, this is kind of fucking cool. Like, this is one of those like really scary, uncomfortable, awkward things to like put people through. And you're like, yes, this is great. Like, these guys are going to end up like, I was like on the beat. I'm like, oh, these guys are going to like end up having to like come to grips that they are together in this like horror. And that's really cool.
Right.
And then the reveal, and you're like, oh, fuck. These kids are fucking monsters.
Yeah, well, because that's the thing, right? This is one of those hard screenwriting things, right? You set this up, and there's 3 options. There's a supernatural entity attacking them. The kids are crazy, or the adult is crazy, right? So it is a hard tightrope. How do you generate tension? And from the start of the film, we are led to believe that she is crazy, right? Someone who doesn't look like either of the kids to me in the reflection is watching her naked, right? So there's this really uncomfortable predatory vibe and this like, huh?
I thought that looked like the kid.
See, I thought it looked like a little girl in like a fucking, Little House on the Prairie dress. So I was this is like going to be one of her like cult sisters. See, I thought it was supposed to be her as a kid watching herself as a woman with her boobs exposed and being like, sinner, right? Like, that's what I thought was happening, right?
Sure.
It was like her old self, like she caught her on Girls Gone Wild because she's showering, was like, gotcha, bitch, sin tape. Like, that's what I thought was happening. But then I was like, so then you're watching, you're like, but this is, because they show her wandering the house. She's hearing sounds. There is some great, subtle, horrifying scenes, right? Like her standing over the kid's bed and they wake up and she's just got a fucking gun in her hand now because the dad thought it was a good idea to give her a gun. Right? Crazy shit. Right. So there are great moments like that, but as an audience, you start watching, you're like, all right, they're setting us up so much that she's having visions. There's no way. It's impossible to believe this is where it's going. So now you're down to, this is going to be something supernatural, or it's the kids, right? And then, so, you know, a little bit, halfway point of the movie, I'm just like, God damn it. Please, 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 don't let this be mischievous kids. I was like, please, God, don't. Because this is the problem. This is where the movie starts kind of rubbing me wrong. And where the cruelty feels unfocused and unimportant and just kind of obscene to me, right? Like, because this is the thing. In a horror movie, you usually have to work to kind of show that someone, like the horror and the trauma they're experiencing is on some greater path or a journey, or someone's being punished, right, for past transgressions, something like that, right? And I was just like, this girl, right, Grace, was a victim. She's done nothing wrong. This led, again, to me and my wife have every movie we've watched for our podcast, like the last 5 have led to really bad arguments with me and my wife. Mostly because I just like to, devil's advocate it. But I was like, she did nothing wrong. She's not married. Like, why is that make her? She's like, she's a bad person because she had an affair. I'm like, she didn't fucking have an affair. She's not married. Like, it's he's to blame. FYI, guys, wives don't like that argument at all. I don't know why. I still think it's sound. But so I'm like, so I didn't want Grace to be just the subtly psychotic killer, right? Because I think it kind of stops this. There are these nice little moments. Like, I liked her explaining her dog, and there are nice little moments of, like, this woman trying to get back on track that I liked. And I didn't want to see that unraveled in a Lifetime way. Right. And the kids have gone through enormous amounts of trauma, right? And their dad is obviously just traumatizing the fuck out of them on the daily. I don't want to then turn and be like, well, the kids are spoiled rich white kids, so they're just going to break this woman psychologically. And so you just kind of see the writing, and you're like, I feel bad for all 3 of them. And it's coming to this horrific train crash of an ending where I don't want to see any of them punished.
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting because I agree. Like, while we were watching it, I was very uncomfortable with, like, where it was going. And as soon as the reveal happened that it's just plucky kids deciding to fuck with the babysitter, essentially. Right. Because, listen, when I was younger, I fucked with our babysitters constantly. But I'll tell you what I never did. I never made them believe that they were in purgatory and knowing full well that they had been through something horribly psychological and close to that already. But, like,
I never murdered their dog. I guess you could say that was an accident. But I'll tell you what you never see in the whole movie is that dog leave its dog bed. Yeah. So the thought that it just was like, I'll go saunter out into a foot of snow and not bark.
Definitely the kids, 100%. But
yeah, and I'm like, once you make kids dog murderers, you're changing these characters
right.
a lot.
I think that's the thing is, like, the kids are so so by the reveal, the kids now are completely culpable. And, like, it starts to do this thing where they try to, like, make it like, well, the kids now are, like, reaping what they sow. I'm like, no. That is not true. Like, if this was like that, they literally would be like, I don't know, shoved. It would be like a knock-knock thing. And they would be like buried up to their head and like in snow or something. Like, that's like an equitable distribution of punishment for like a horror film. But
it's also hard too, because it gets into this kind of like, there are just moments that are so wildly implausible, right? Like the 50 snow angels. You didn't see the fucking boot prints? Like, you didn't think to go out and get a closer... Like, what about the scene when they just carry her out into the snow? Right? Like, I don't care how drunk you get her. Even carrying my wife, right? My wife probably, taller and heavier than them, but I was like, I'm a lot bigger than that kid. It would be hard to just carry someone out into the snow and not leave fucking tracks. So that's where I was like, there's something extra, because this is the other thing, right? Like when she gets lost and somehow gets turned around and is perfectly on the path back to the cabin. And so this is where that ending started to really bother me. So all of the great work of the film and the great performances was falling apart in my head. Right. And so at the end of the movie, I started thinking, and this is the thing that I got caught on. I was like, what the fuck was the purpose of that fucking dollhouse? And that's when it all clicked into place for me. And I know I have my classic Josh Griffey theory. I think this movie is actually hell, right? I think this is the classic, all ye who enter abandon hope moment.
Are you saying we're getting St. Elsewhere in this movie?
Yeah, 100%. But see, this is the thing. I hate when movies do the what you've seen isn't really happening, so there are no dramatic stakes, right? I think this movie is happening, and I think it's all happening to Alicia Silverstone's character, right?
All right. You're going to need to explain that because she died. So
yes, exactly. But that's why I believe.
So you're saying it's like a theater of the mind thing?
No. I think this is actually her suffering in the hell that she created. And here's a couple pieces of evidence, right, that I've laid out.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Okay.
Because, even down to the point, as soon as they showed Riley Keough's character, whatever her name is, I was like, that's a really interesting casting decision. She looks exactly like young Alicia Silverstone to me. Right? Yeah. Like, not like clueless Alicia Silverstone, but what this version of Alicia Silverstone could have looked like. And I was like, this dad's got a fucking type, right? So this is my argument, right? Because as soon as I watched the end of the movie, I could not explain a couple things, right? I couldn't explain the nosebleed. I couldn't explain the dollhouse. There are a couple things that were bothering me, right? So I went back and restart the movie. And if you restart the movie right after you finish it, something jumps out and becomes insanely, shockingly clear right off the bat. And to me, it is this, right? The first thing we see is this jumping around of the dollhouse, right? So we see that this inner dollhouse that is the lodge, right? Like, first off, they have a replica dollhouse of this fucking lodge. Whatever.
Yeah.
Because I feel like later in the movie when he finds it and they did all the red rum writing on it and shit, it doesn't look exactly like the lodge, right? So we cut through, and this, they even have that creepy Virgin Mary painting in the little dollhouse. Yeah. They have a little tiny gun, right? And they have 4 dolls in the house, not including the doll that represents the mother. So the first scene of the movie is her walking into the room, and they do a close-up on her eyeball looking through the window of the dollhouse. And to me, that shot is the entire movie. This is the hell she's created, is there is someone else in this house with her husband and her kids living in this lodge that she wants, right? We see later in their birthday gift to dad, right, the footage of her enjoying her time at the lodge. Her, the Grace character wearing their mother's snow hat, this and that, right?
Right, yeah, which was a big fucking to-do.
Right, and then even when she sees that ghostly figure under the water, right, it's a faceless character that looks like her wearing the hat and then is grabbed by the cultist father or whatever. So I think the movie's telling us is that is her fucking prison, right? Then she picks up the doll that is wearing the exact same dress she is. That's her daughter's doll she's playing with, blah, blah, blah. My next piece of evidence, right, that I was stuck on is when we go to the house, the dad is adamant that the woman is not at his house, right? But when she pulls up, she sees a faceless lady in the window. When she goes into the kitchen, she sees a faceless lady, the back of her head running out into the garden. I find it, even for this guy, ridiculous to believe that as he's about to drop this news on her, he would risk getting caught with his dick in the new girlfriend. Right? It feels like even him, he would not have her in the house and lie and say she's not in the house when she's trying to make a getaway. And the fact that they never show her face is wildly important to me, because then she can project herself onto the faceless woman, right?
Right.
The younger version of herself, right?
Right.
That, I think, is important, right? The next piece of evidence to me, when they get to the cabin, they say all of the religious paraphernalia is hers, right?
Right.
Alicia Silverstone could have been, this is the long one that my wife doesn't agree with. She could have been the traumatized cult member that he actually met and married.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I think you could make the argument that the character we see in that footage is actually Alicia Silverstone, because we don't see that scene until after it happens. She becomes this cartoonish character of a, like a thriller movie girlfriend, right? A scary girlfriend character.
Sure.
Anyways,
Sure.
that might be a bit of a stretch, right? There's another connection between the two. The shots where the daughter from the backseat is looking at them, look at themselves in rear view mirrors. Right? So Alicia Silverstone's kind of like, blah, 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 not as confident, trying to get her stuff on, notices her daughter watching. There's this little moment, right? She's still trying to church it up for him. When the other girl walks up to the car the first time, through foggy, clouded glass again, so her face is obscured, she gets in. Right. She's putting on her makeup in the mirror and looks up and smiles, right? This is her. This gets to my other point, though, right? This is the big one. For the life of me, this theory has one big gaping hole, right? Which is, if I am truly to believe that this is Alicia Silverstone's point of view and her living her own hell, why does she make her children dog-murdering psychopaths? Because it totally explains away why the father is the worst character in the history of movies. Okay. Right? It totally explains away the fear of this other woman becoming unglued and this scary, mentally unstable woman who's going to hurt her kids. It explains away the nonsensical moments of the children tricking her, right? With like her getting lost and then coming back to the house, which is ridiculous. Needle in a hay, right? In a 360 degrees, she picked the 1 degree that takes her right back to the house. Right?
Right.
So it explains away a lot of those moments. The one I couldn't figure out for the life of me. Why does she make the kids dog-murdering psychos that torture this girl? That's the hard sell. And I have a theory on that, too. Does anything leap out in your mind?
Well, the kids, it's tough. Because you think about... In relation to your theory, would you think that maybe like it's about maybe that's the penalty for what you leave behind? Maybe that's the hell itself, is that instead of your kids, you get these cracked mirror versions of your kids. You get these goateed evil versions like in Star Trek.
See, I think you're onto something there, because to me, I think it's a two-prong attack on that, right? One, this is what your kids will be when you're not there. So through all of her pain, what she does is choose to leave her kids, right? Because she can't endure the pain anymore, right? That's the hardest, I'm sure, part when you're imagining, these things. And I've had to deal with this with someone near me, that leaving people behind, especially 2 kids, man. So I think there's probably a version of, I'm not there to protect them. Look at how they're going awry. This lady's attacking them. Maybe. There's another scene, though, that really struck me, which is the doll that she hands her daughter, right, that represents her. The daughter and the son are in the backseat playing with it, and the fucking kid from It rips its arm off.
Yeah.
And she's like, you better hope it goes back together, right? Something like that. And then I was like, oh, man, this is like a deep mother thing that my wife has explained to me, right? This loss of control of your own body and how much you have to give to the life you create. I'm sure for moms, that's like a mind-blowing experience. But there's possibly a part of Alicia Silverstone that somewhat is like looking at these kids and like, man, because I gave so much to you and this and that, I became the broken toy that your dad didn't want to play with anymore. Right? So I think maybe there's some subtle bits of that, right? Not saying like she's like, my fucking kids, I knew they'd murder a dog eventually. But I think that's what I mean. When you're creating your hell, the hell is going to play to the extremes of your fear. Right. And what I think is if you go back and watch the movie, right, up until the funeral, I think it is a master class in subtly laying out the things that this woman most dreads.
Okay. Well, then,
and these elements that are creating this terror for her.
All right. This closes the gap on your theory, I think. The kids being the way they are is the horror that maybe you've left them you've left your kids not like, we're raising our children. We're trying to raise them the right way, trying to make them good people. The horror is that you've raised these little monsters. Mm-hmm. So you left these kids in the lurch. So the horror would be that you think you have raised kids that can like handle themselves, but in reality they have fucked up. They're so fucking. It's not that they're fucked up; they're just evil. So instead of leaving good people on this earth, like the best party, because our kids are these extensions of ourselves, we're trying to make things better for them because, we experience that life a certain way. We want to make sure that every generation wants to improve the next generation by making life better for them. Mm-hmm. So maybe the idea would be in hell, her children are these reflections on her own selfishness, perhaps.
Yeah, or so even really, just on a bigger scale, right? This is a woman who would have, especially if, I think if I watched it and really focused in, I could probably find it. And again, none of this might be true. This is just how I'm choosing to interpret the movie. And I think it solves my big problems with the film, right? But I think there's probably a way, and I don't know if it's the mark on her hand, the cross on her hand, or something. I bet there is a clue somewhere that I could tie that mom, Alicia Silverstone, to being another one of his book projects, right? I bet you could fucking find that. Even before she kills herself, what does she do? She straightens up some books on a table. So I was like, there's got to be something there if I really had more time to find it. And if you find that, then the whole thing explodes, right? But this is what I mean. Even to your point, right? Like maybe I have given birth to evil. I'm not there to protect him. Maybe it's just this woman who has had all these trust issues and abuse issues possibly. It's just like, are there any good people, period?
I mean, I don't even think it's necessarily I gave birth to evil. I think it's so
well,
much more
the world will come and take them anyways, right?
Right. Like, it's so much more psychologically horrifying than that. Like, to me, the true fear of having a child now, besides, like, the ever-impending doom of the world, is simply, like... Like, the thing that scares the shit out of me the most is that I'm going to put them out in the world and they'll be the worst version of me. Like, that I think is probably, and that's an like, I mean, in relative terms, I'm not that self-involved, but at the same time, like, that is essentially what it is. Like, you want to make sure that you want to make sure that you're telling your kids the right things, teaching them the right things. So for the kids to become these little psychopaths who are willing to torture a woman simply because she likes their dad. I mean,
to be fair, she did know that she was cackling real loud. She was like, hey, teenager who's probably trying to quietly jerk off in a room already with a sister. It's a creepy hard time to be that age. Let's add this extra layer of problem on this. So I understand him being pushed over the edge, but Jesus Christ.
Sure, but like beside that,
right?
When you like on the global scale, when you think about it, I think it works. Your theory is sound. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility.
Right. But like, I mean, so I think that explains almost the entire movie to me. All the problems I start having and the arbitrary nature of let's just punish these three people that I don't find worthy of being punished. Right? In such cruel manners, when you think of it here's Alicia Silverstone always looking into the dollhouse and unable to, fit in and participate anymore. These are just watching her worst fears extrapolating out.
Right.
And then I think the imagery of the cult father, right? The big bearded fucking Rasputin preacher, that house that she finds in the wilderness and knocks and no one answers, right? Because now she's in hell. Like, no one's coming. No religious people are coming. And her walking back, her seeing the vision of being pulled under. I think these are kind of caricatures of, these kind of religious symbolisms that she's struggling with. And this is what she will have. Because that's the other thing. I mean, I still can't explain away the dog all the way. But all I know about the dog is, because this is what she says too, right? Is this is my symbol of a new life, right? And then once that dog gets killed, it all goes bad, right? So maybe it's just as simple as this is supposed to be like the last bit of decency leaving and being ripped from her again. Because again, me and my wife, we have a dog, right? We have a younger dog. And I was like, you take a dog to a house they've never been with people they don't know, and the dog just sits quietly and nicely in that bed for a couple days? No, that's a supernatural dog, motherfuckers. That is Michael
that's
Landon,
like
Angel,
that's like
Highway to Heaven dog.
That's like a Damien Omen 2 protector dog.
Yeah, but like the opposite, right? Like he's like, it's a Watu the Watcher dog. You know what I mean? I'm just here to chill and eat some Alpo, guys. I'm not going to intervene. Hey, stop watching her shower. Naughty, naughty, right? That dog has like a Niles Crane voice. But that's, I mean, as soon as I saw that dog, I'm like, something's not right here. Something's not right with this motherfucking dog. It doesn't bark. It's not going. I mean, it does bark at a spirit, right? A couple times, but the other one was the nosebleed, which I think might just be as simple as her fantasy opening up, right? Her being aware, right, that something is off with her body in this place. I think it might be as simple as that. And again, I don't know that any of this theory holds any water, but there is another scene that I think, again, that the filmmakers are taking a lot of steps to say, hey, man, second half of this movie, we're giving you Shining level brutality, but with no kind of like fun supernatural shield, right? The Shining without the supernatural bits is just agony to watch. Just a dad trying to beat his son's head in with an axe or a bat. You wouldn't be that interested in that, but you put a little ghost in and we can pull out, right? And that's what this movie does, is like, hey, just watch these three seemingly decent people fuck each other up and probably all die at the end. And when you see the dad get shot, you're like, well, he had that coming for sure. But the other three, but so it was hard for me to watch.
That's one of those moments in a movie I'm like, man, that was very overdue.
Yeah, I was like, this was going to happen eventually with this cavalier dick throwing motherfucker. It was going to happen to him, right? It was. I mean, he gave her the fucking gun. And so that part, I'm like, I don't care. But that's what I mean. Watching these three get destroyed. And then I was like, oh, okay. So if there is this supernatural art house element, then it just becomes then it becomes more fun to watch and enjoyable to watch, because now we are watching this woman create her own fears. Instead of being like, here are two children who legitimately are going to get their fucking lives ended because they pranked their dad's girlfriend and it got way the fuck out of control. You know, and that's a harder movie to sell than this. But here's the scene, right? So they're at their mom's funeral. All these fucking balloons, right? We're going to release the balloons. That's her soul going to heaven, right? Her black soul, which was a weird choice. I was like, that's strange. Maybe some white balloons for the soul. Black dress to show mourning. White balloons for heavenly soul. Not fucking... This is not the Black Parade, guys. You know what I mean? But what happens in that scene? Do you remember?
The doll comes back down.
Her doll that represents her refusing to leave the scene.
Which I think might be the most important iconography to actually support your claim here.
Yeah.
That might be the most important piece of evidence that actually puts this forward, because that, to me, ultimately symbolizes that she's not gone at all.
Right.
That's where she is.
Right. That she is still actively here and a part of the film. And that scene to me, I was like, that and the eyeball in the dollhouse, I'm like, all right, they are trying to tell me the faceless every woman that's taken her man, the absolute utter stupidity of the husband. Like, they literally have a scene that says 6 months later, he's like, well, it's time for me to, you go listen to me fuck my new girlfriend in the cabin. Like, that's going to happen, kids. Stop being assholes. And I was like, there's no way. 6 months after that happened, like, even the worst dad would have to have a little couth
also,
about what's happening.
Also, I thought, to go along with this, when after Grace has, like, flagellated herself with the coals and everything, she comes upstairs. Her face is burned. She has something etched in her cheeks, and I couldn't figure out what it said, which was bothering me, because I feel like that's important. But the other thing, too, is... that doll, she lights the head on fire first, and her face is burned, which I think has a lot. I mean, it goes with your theory, man. There's a lot of things going on. The head was also what
she damaged in her act. She says specifically, like when she snaps, she says, "Death is behind us now."
I honestly think. I think the reason that your theory holds water, and the reason it has to be honest with you, is because otherwise, this literally is a movie about like, hey, you know what you shouldn't do? Fuck with people. End of story. Like, that's like the movie.
And that's what I mean, right? Is that the very thing that bothered me about the movie, made me want to turn the movie off, because I was so fucking just uncomfortable. At the end of the movie, when it cuts to black, And the last thing we see is a loaded gun. And granted, I thought, well, maybe this is just me personally, because, you know, some of the listeners know I dealt with this very issue, right? Like, I lost a loved one, you know, who by gun had an act like this and, you know, was involved in that process of mourning. And so when, you know, even when Alicia Silverstone commits her act, I almost turned the movie off, man. Like, there's just a movie, there's a fucking song, you know, that was played during that event. And I'm like, you know, it's just hard for me to deal with. So I was like, maybe this is just you, but I was getting really upset at this movie. So I was like, I get it. These kids fucked up. I don't want to see them get fucking shot also. And I don't like the idea of this woman who is just reduced to a stereotype of she'll never escape her abuse, right? That she's so easily gotten by these kids and she had this bad person inside of her that she was enjoying filming the bodies. You know, that's the one part, too, that I couldn't all the way explain away is her seeing the visions of the members under the purple blankets, right, throughout the lodge scene. But I was like, to me, it's either Alicia Silverstone is the cult member that he married, and then when he gets a new plaything, she feels betrayed again, right? Or maybe Alicia Silverstone she was married to the guy when he started this project. Maybe she's seen all this footage. And so it's extra like, why this girl? Why this fucking broken thing? So maybe that's Alicia Silverstone ascribing some more of that herself. But to me, that's what I mean, though. Now it's more The Shining. Now there is this extra layer of art house that pulls me away from this seemingly unjust brutality and cruelty that was bothering me.
Well, I mean, and I think that's probably the best way to look at it, because otherwise it is just a brutal movie for brutality.
Yeah, and that's what really bothered me, because there's so much good storytelling going on.
Yeah, and I think that's what's great about this kind of movie is it sparks this kind of conversation, because you and I are sitting here not just marveling at the brutality. We're sitting here trying to find an explanation for it. Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing about The Lodge and about movies like this is that you have to go a layer deeper. You can't just look at it on the surface. It's the same reason Hereditary is so good. Hereditary is great. It's in the same family as this kind of movie. And it's so great because it requires you to go another level. It can't just be crazy fucking people. Granted, you know, we started the pod by saying, like, this is in the genre of, like, rich, entitled white people problems. But if you go
I think
a layer
maybe that's
deeper,
the
this
give,
is
right?
Great.
If you watch it as a normal movie, you're like,
that's what makes us.
Yeah, rich white people. It's okay to slaughter them, right? We already did Ready or Not. Absolutely. It's fine if they're rich whites. You're like, that's fine to watch them just devolve and beat each other up and kill each other. But that's what I mean. Right. I think what is really cool about this movie is I think there are probably people who watch this movie. Like my wife, she didn't pick up on anything I saw, and she's like, I don't think it's crazy, but like she just watched it as just a human tragedy. And she's like, you know, shit like this just happens a lot. Like there's just senseless violence, and she actually looked at it that way. I mean, I think later, like, she helped me build this theory and was interested, but maybe more as a thought experiment. But I think there's also a way to watch this movie of this lady who going through both extremes, right? She sees the extreme of the cult and loses all of the friends and family she was raised with for nothing. Nothing good came out of that. Right. None of their prophecies happened. And then at the end, I don't think it's saying, look, the prophecy did happen. You are a sinner. But I think maybe she just looks and she's like, fuck, man, I tried, and look what fucking happened. So maybe there's a nihilism to grace. She's just like, fuck, I'm like, why do we struggle with this? So, I mean, I think you can watch it either way, but I think that is what is fascinating about this movie is that it doesn't go so art house to where it's, you know, there are a lot of movies like this that go way out on the style and the spookiness and ghost stuff, and then, you know, average audiences are like, fuck that, man, just tell me a story. Yeah. And I think this one is a masterclass in you get the art house stuff up front to give us a lot of clues. Right. But it plays exactly like a normal narrative of just people going through a horrible event. And then you can also just watch the last part as people going through a horrible event. So it has all that stuff without getting in the way of the product. And I mean, that is really hard to accomplish. So when I went back and rewatched the first half again, I was like, man, I love this movie. I love what this movie's trying to do and accomplish. You know, so it went from I'm going to turn this fucking movie off to like my hair being blown back. You know, I really, really love this movie.
I mean, it's great. I mean, when you do it that way, when you think about it in that direction, it becomes a much better movie than just simply fucked up people. I would prefer to I'd prefer to watch a movie like that and have this kind of discussion after watching it so that you can dive deep enough. And that's like the beauty of these kinds of movies is they're always going to require a little more homework,
right?
And not in a bad way either. So
yeah, and I don't even know if require, but they allow you to do more.
Yeah,
if you want.
I mean, I think in that respect, that's where the Lodge succeeds.
Oh yeah, because once we got to the part where I'm like, he's ratchet strapping himself to the ceiling with the noose, I was like, what the fuck is the S? But then you start thinking about it.
That was the part I was like, kids aren't that smart.
But I was like, even if they are, like, that's your, like, what? You know, I mean, I was like, this is like getting into some Home Alone shit now. Like, that's a lot of theatricality to convince her that we're already. I mean, it just took this turn where I was like, this is somewhat. It was unappealing to me. And then it's like, so we have this goofy Home Alone reveal into here is just gut wrenching brutality. But then, again, I think if you pull back from the movie and look at a lot of the, the really good storytelling that's happening, I trust and want to believe that these were not just filmmakers and actors saying, hey, man, do you want to see some fucking seemingly decent people get fucked up? Like, I would like to imagine a little more was going on. And I think the pieces are there. I think it's cool that a movie can be both. You know what I mean?
Yeah, agreed. It's good.
Centipede in the sheets, art house in the streets. You know what I mean? That's the kind of movie I'm looking for.
Well done. That is an all-timer right there.
Woo! Just thought of that. Orson Welles for the common man. Woo! Pew, 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 pew. Finger guns. Orson Welles would never do finger guns because I'm common.
Stop. Yeah, no. You've just totally lost your no more Orson Welles of the common man.
He tried to keep some mystery. I keep the Cheeto dust in my beard so people know I'm among the peoples. That's it, guys. That's The Lodge. I hope you guys liked it as much as I did. I would love to hear if you think that Alex and I did a good enough job laying out this theory of the movie. If there's more evidence or a different theory that you guys had, do you think I'm full of shit? I would love for you guys to reach out on our social media. Film Alchemist 1 on Twitter. FilmAlchemistPod@gmail.com. We got Facebook, all the good stuff. Reach out. Let us know. Am I full of shit or did I see something here? Are you guys with me on this? But most of all, man, watch The Lodge on Hulu. It's fantastic. There are so many good indie movies, especially indie horror movies that are on there that you guys could support, man. We've done a couple. I Trapped the Devil is another noteworthy Hulu find for us. But get on there, find these movies, man. Share them with your friends. That means a lot to movies like this, I think. But yeah, man, I love what The Lodge accomplished, and I am stoked for them to keep making movies for a long, long time.
I mean, it's the beauty of the streaming age. We get it everywhere.
That's right. A movie that would have come and gone, and good luck finding it. Now we find it, man. So for the Film Alchemist, please leave a rating and review, especially on Apple Podcast app. Follow us on YouTube, Nerd Alchemist, plural with an S at the end. And as always, man, thanks for being with us. Subscribe, all that good stuff. Yeah, comment. For the Film Alchemist, I'm Josh Griffey.
I'm Alex Dean.